Southern Germany, late evening. General Patton was driving back to headquarters after inspecting forward positions. His route took him past a field hospital recently established in a converted German schoolhouse. It was getting dark. The sun had set. Maybe 20 minutes earlier, Patton's driver was about to pass the hospital when Patton noticed something on the ground outside the building near the entrance. He told the driver to stop. Patton got out of the Jeep and walked closer. There were men lying on the ground outside the hospital, not just lying down on blankets on the dirt in the cold April evening. Patton walked over to them. He counted 14 men, all in American uniforms, all wounded. Bandages on arms, on legs, on heads, blood visible through the gauze, and all 14 were black soldiers. Patton looked at the hospital. Behind them, the building was lit up inside. He could see through the windows beds full of patients, medical staff moving around, white, soldiers inside, warm, treated, beds, medicine, black soldiers outside, cold, ignored, dirt, nothing. Patton bent down. Next to one of the men, a corporal with his leg bandaged heavily. "Why are you out here, soldier?" The corporal looked up, saw the 4 stars on Patton's helmet. His eyes widened. "Sir," they said. "The hospital is full, sir." Patton looked at the building again, then back at the corporal. "Full of what?" The corporal hesitated. "Patients, sir. White." "Patients?" The corporal didn't answer. He didn't have to. Patton stood up, looked at the other 13 men lying in the dirt, wounded American soldiers who'd been fighting the same war, bleeding the same blood, and they were sleeping outside a hospital that had beds inside because of the color of their skin. Patton turned to his driver. "Get the hospital commander out here now." The driver ran into the building. Patton stood with the 14 men waiting in the cold beside them. A confrontation was coming. Before we continue, make sure you subscribe. We tell the stories of World War II, where sometimes the most important battle wasn't against the enemy. It was against the people who were supposed to be on your side. The hospital commander was a major named William Hutchins. He'd been in the Army Medical Corps for 12 years. He came out of the building, saw Patton standing with the 14 black soldiers on the ground. Hutchins saluted. Patton didn't return the salute. He pointed at the men on the ground. "Major, why are these wounded soldiers lying outside your hospital?" Hutchins looked at the men, then back at Patton. "Sir, the hospital is at capacity. We don't have beds available." Patton looked at the building behind Hutchins. "How many beds do you have, Major?" 40, sir." "And how many are occupied?" Hutchins hesitated. 38, sir." "Patton, let that sit for a moment. You have 2 empty beds and 14 wounded men outside in the dirt. Major, that's not a capacity problem. That's a choice." Hutchins started to respond. Patton cut him off. "Don't explain. Major, just answer this question. Are these men outside because they're black?" Hutchins looked at the ground. "Sir, we have a policy about integrating the wards." "A policy?" Patton stepped closer to Hutchins. "Major, I don't care about your policy. I care about wounded American soldiers getting treatment, and right now I see 14 Americans who aren't getting what they need. He turned and looked at the hospital, then back at Hutchins. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to take every one of these 14 men inside right now. You're going to give them beds, treatment, everything. The white soldiers inside are getting. Hutchins protested. Sir, the other patients, some of them won't accept being in the same ward as colored soldiers. Patton's voice got quieter. Major, I don't care what the other patients accept. This is a United States Army hospital, not a country club. These men fought for their country. They bled for their country, and they will be treated in their country's hospital. He paused. And if any patient has a problem with that, you tell them. They can take it up with me personally. Hutchins looked at the 14 men, then at Patton. Sir, we don't have enough beds for all of them, even with the 2 available. Patton didn't hesitate. Then, you make room. You discharge anyone who can walk. You put 2 men to a bed if you have to. I don't care how you do it, but these 14 men will be inside, warm, and treated within the next 10 minutes. He looked at his watch. It's 7:30. At 7:40, I'm coming back inside that building, and if I see one of these men still on the ground, you'll be relieved of command and transferred to a latrine digging unit. Do you understand, Major? Hutchins stared at Patton. Yes, sir. Then get moving. Hutchins turned and ran back. Inside the hospital, Patton looked down at the 14 men. You're going inside. You're getting treatment. And if anyone gives you trouble, you tell them, General. Patton ordered it. One of the men, a private with a bandaged head, spoke up. Sir, we don't want to cause problems. Patton looked at him. Son, the only problem here is that you're outside when you should be inside getting help. He bent down closer to the private. You fought for this country. You got wounded for this country. You have every right to be treated with respect in your country's hospital within 5 minutes. Medical staff started coming out, carrying stretchers. The 14 men were lifted, carefully placed on the stretchers, carried inside. Patton watched each one go in. When the last man was inside, Patton walked into the hospital himself. Inside, it was chaos. Beds were being rearranged. White patients were being discharged. If they could walk, others were being doubled up, and the 14 black soldiers were being given beds, blankets, medical attention. Some of the white patients were clearly unhappy. One, a sergeant with his arm in a sling, approached Major Hutchins. Sir, I don't want to be in the same room as them. Hutchins started to respond. Patton stepped forward. Sergeant, you have 2 choices. You can stay in this hospital and accept that your fellow soldiers are being treated here, or you can leave. The sergeant looked at Patton's 4 stars. Sir, I was just... You were just what? Going to complain? That wounded Americans are getting treatment. The sergeant looked at the floor. No, sir. Good. Then, get back to your bed and let these men rest. The sergeant walked away. Patton stayed at the hospital for another 30 minutes, making sure all 14 men were settled, comfortable, being treated before he left. He pulled Major Hutchins aside. Major, this never happens again. Every wounded American gets treatment. I don't care what color they are. Do you understand? Yes, sir. If I hear of one more case of a wounded soldier being turned away from this hospital because of the color of their skin, you will be court-martialed for dereliction of duty. Hutchins nodded. Yes, sir. Patton looked around the hospital one more time, saw the 14 black soldiers in beds, finally, getting care. Then he left. The story of what Patton did that night spread through the Third Army within days. Other hospitals in the Third Army's area got the message. Wounded black soldiers started being admitted without question. It wasn't perfect. There were still problems, still resistance, but it was a start. One of the 14 men that Patton found outside the hospital was a private named Samuel Williams from Georgia. He'd been shot in the shoulder during a firefight 2 days earlier. Williams survived his wounds, went home after the war. In 1982, he was interviewed for a local newspaper about his war experience. He was asked what he remembered most. He said, I remember lying on the ground outside that hospital in the cold, thinking that after everything we'd done, we still weren't good enough to be inside. And then a 4-star general stopped his jeep, got out, and stood next to us in the dirt until they let us in. That's the day I learned that some people in power actually give a damn. Williams died in 1995. At the age of 72, his family donated his uniform and medals to a local museum. The museum created a display about his service in the war, and part of that display tells the story of the night. He was lying outside a hospital, and a general stopped. Today, if you visit that museum in Georgia, you can read Williams' own words about the moment. Someone with power used it to do the right thing. The hospital in Germany no longer exists. The schoolhouse was returned to the Germans after the war, but the story remains. 14 wounded black soldiers lying in the dirt outside a hospital that had beds inside, and a general who made sure they got what they deserved. What would you have done if you'd been Major Hutchins that night? Would you have followed the policy or the general? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories about the moments when someone decided that doing the right thing mattered more than following the rules, make sure you subscribe.